Hello and welcome to the 5 Minute Call, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the stories of the people that make theatre happen.
In this episode, we're talking to Luke Kempner, an incredible comedian, impressionist and current Thénardier in Les Misérables.
Luke talks about work versus play, his leap of faith from musical theatre into the world of comedy, and offers insights into how his vocal control informs his character development process.
Members of the company, this is your 5-minute call. All beginners, please make your way to the stage. This is your 5-minute call. Your 5-minute call.
Luke, thank you so much for coming and joining us on the 5-minute call. It's really lovely to have you here. We are all about people's stories and how they got to be doing what they're doing.
Okay.
So tell us your story.
Well, it started, I grew up in Surrey, the sort of rubbish end of Surrey. Am I allowed to swear? How much swearing?
Yeah, absolutely.
The shithole end of Surrey, near sort of Gatwick area.
Okay.
And, was always a performer at school, always singing, always doing musical theatre, very into Les Mis from the age of about, 10, when I first got the 10th anniversary video. So I was always sort of heavily into theatre, and then just sort of, I studied, I went to drama school, went to Guildford School of Acting, and then left Guildford School of Acting and went, I'd sort of had about 9 months out of work and thought my life was over. But then went into Les Mis, the 25th anniversary tour, which I did, and then, which culminated at the O2 and the Barbican, which was amazing. And then I did Avenue Q and South Pacific, and then a show called Lift at the Soho Theatre. And then I decided to stop doing all of that and start doing comedy. So I did a video where I did 12 Downton Abbey impressions on YouTube. This was in 2013. And Stephen Fry posted about it and said, a splendid display of Downtonry and a superb impressionist. And then and that video went absolutely mental. And then off the back of that, I wrote a show called The Only Way is Downton, which I did in Edinburgh in 2014. And then I did it in the West End at the Trafalgar Studios. And then I toured it around the country for 2 years. I did it in America. I did it in Canada in an 800-seater for a month. I went to Russia with it. I went to Spain with it. So I did that for a couple of years and then started doing stand-up off the back of that, because I decided I didn't want to be just the guy because I was the Downton guy and I didn't want to be the Game of Thrones guy, the Breaking Bad guy. I wanted to be Luke Kempner. So I started writing stand-up. Which was mixing impressions in with it. So I did that and then started writing shows which involved stand-up and impressions, which I did for a number of years in amongst sort of telework and radio work around all of that stuff. I'm telling this in as quick a way as possible to get to present day. And then...
I'm slightly feeling like I've got whiplash.
I know. It's like we can stop anyway. We can stop off
let's
on the tour. Then we get out, But you said the story. Here's the story. And we're only halfway through. There's a way to go. But press the button and then we get off. And then
everybody
we can have a look.
is now desperate to know about that story. But let's just break it down a little bit before we go any further.
Okay.
How does a young kid in Surrey get into theatre? Like, where did that come from?
Well, it was a lot of there was an Amdram company called the East Surrey Operatic Society, which I went to from the age of 12 when I was in Carousel.
Did you know other people who were doing that?
No, they had Oliver was coming up. They were going to do Oliver. And some people at my school, my drama teacher knew that said, you'd be good to do Oliver, but they're doing Carousel now. And there was a woman from who used to live down our road that used to go, who said that we really need an Enoch Snow Jr. And they said, you should come and audition. And I went and auditioned and got the part and started rehearsals that night. So there wasn't many people up for it. But then they were like, but Oliver, we're doing Oliver in the summer. So, you should do Carousel. And then I played the Artful Dodger when we did Oliver at Polesden Lacey, this open air theatre, which was amazing. So, it was kind of just like that. There was a woman down our road that went. And then I used to go on Thursday nights. And that's when but I don't know, it's weird because I think it's probably the same for a lot of performers, but I just always felt like I was going to do it. Like I never felt like I would do anything else ever. It was never like, oh, I'm going to go to university and study and see, what my options are. It was just like, it was never, ever even a decision. It was like, I am going to be a musical theatre performer. And that was just always what I was going to do. And luckily it's worked out. But I mean, because it might not have done, but I really, just was always that. There was never any decision of anything else I was going to do, which is nice.
You mentioned a drama teacher there.
Yeah.
You obviously had support in that and encouragement.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that I was very enthusiastic. I was quite badly behaved at school. Like, sort of got threatened with expulsion and suspensions and things. My parents were called in because I fucked around a lot. But all I was often doing was doing impressions of teachers and making other kids laugh. But of course, that's quite disruptive. And we had a teacher called Miss West, who was a science teacher, and I would do impressions of her, and she goes, "Oh, I don't like being mimicked." Was often like catchphrase I would do of hers, but just disrupting other kids. Which at the time when I was sort of 13, 14, I was becoming popular via it. So I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And then the teachers sort of said, oh, we're going to kick you out. And my mum was very disappointed with me, and that made me cry a lot. And then I knuckled down quite a lot, but I really enjoyed drama and music. So those classes, I didn't muck around as much because I felt like I could be the best in there. But then I sort of brought that to other aspects and just decided that if I worked hard, then my mum wouldn't be disappointed in me. So I did work quite hard and ended up getting quite good GCSEs, and then left and studied drama at A level before going to drama school.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned music. Did you play an instrument?
I played piano and I did classical singing. So my piano playing is fine, but I wouldn't have ever put it down for my grades. It was more, I always used my singing was always my instrument.
Yeah. So you went off to college.
Yeah.
Did you already tell us which college? Sorry,
Guildford.
Such a speedy
Yeah,
time.
that's all right. I went to Guildford, yeah.
And good time there? Was it what you expected it to be?
I loved it. I mean, I found myself at times a little bit frustrated because I regret this in some ways. I found myself going, as soon as I was there, I was like, I don't need to be here. I need to work. I need to get out into the professional world now. And you think 3 years is a very long time when you're there. You're like, oh my God. And I got a job, a play called New Boy, which I did at the Tabard Theatre in Chiswick. So I left Guildford early-ish. I sort of left in the March of the year that you graduate, and then went back to do the showcase, but meant I missed a couple of shows. But I was like, it's fine, I'm working. And I don't regret that side of it, but I do regret thinking, I can't wait to get out of here and work, because I don't think I realised how lucky I was to be a place where you have no pressure, no responsibilities, and you just get to perform every day with your friends. And you live in a place where you can walk everywhere. You could go out and party if you want. You could not do that, but there's that brilliant song in Avenue Q, I wish I could go back to college. Life was so simple back then. But I always think about that song and how I didn't understand it when I first used to love Avenue Q when I was sort of 16, 17. And I now think of that song and I go, oh yeah, no, I do wish I could go back to college. Because I'd love to go back with my knowledge now and just know, there was you had no pressure, and I chat to grads who I'm in Les Mis with now, and I'm just like, you need to enjoy this time. And I try to do it in an unpatronizing way, but you think the world is so, you think there's so much pressure on you when you're 21, and it's like, there just isn't. You can enjoy this because you haven't got responsibility, you haven't got a mortgage, you haven't got a kid, you haven't got the pressure of age, all of it is just enjoy it. Yeah. And I wish I'd enjoyed drama school a bit more. I wish I'd not tried to fall in love every day a little bit more. And just, but look, I really enjoyed drama school. And it felt like, oh, finally I'm in a place where educationally suits me. Because before I'd mucked around and doing classes, which I was like, this isn't helping me. When I was at drama school, I was like, oh no, this is where I'm meant to be. And I loved learning from good people around me, people like Bradley Jaden and Joel Montague all in my year. And I loved learning from those good people. And we had directors like Peter Harris, Julian Walford, and learning from amazing people coming in. I felt I learned more than just sort of regular teachers. But I found that when we had sort of people that would come in for a term and they would just suddenly inspire you. And like I say, other actors around that would inspire you. Yeah, like I learned so much and enjoyed it and would love to do it again.
Yeah, I think that's quite a common theme, actually. You spend a long time trying to get out of education and then many, many years thinking, oh, can I go back? When do I get to go back?
Yeah, completely.
Because I'd like to do this degree and this degree and
I know. Yeah.
So you come out of there into 9 months of no work.
Yeah, I got lots. I used to get to finals of shows quite a lot. So things like, it was in those days, it was like Imagine This. There was Jersey Boys, Oliver, Drury Lane, all these shows I go right down for. Les Mis in town and not get it. And I was just constantly thought, oh, maybe I'm not good enough for it. Maybe all these years I've thought I'm the one. And then maybe I'm not quite right. So that, and I struggled with that. And then I was working in a hairdresser's just on reception, sweeping up hair in Chiswick with lots of arts ed students that would come in and they'd be like, and I'd be like, I went to drama school. And they're like, all right. And I'll be like, oh, it's going better than it looks. But then I got offered a play in Hampstead, in a pub. It was called like the Pentameters Theatre in Hampstead, and it was doing a Noel Coward play where I was playing the part of Noel Coward called I'll Leave It to You, and Noel Coward had written it about himself, and I was playing the Noel Coward part. But the money was like 30 quid a week, and my mum said to me that you've got to do this. So my mum didn't have much money, but she said, look, I'll give you 200 quid a week so you can live. And so I did that. And then during that time, I was rehearsing that show. I was auditioning for Les Mis, the 25th anniversary tour, and got it. And so it was just kind of like, I think doing it again and gaining confidence from being a lead part, even though it was in a small 30-seater theatre, I just think gave me a little bit more belief within the auditions. And actually, I've always had great confidence in auditions since then. I mean, I have spent 10 years out of theatre, so the average is narrowed down. But I don't think there's a job I haven't got from auditioning, really. The King in Hamilton I didn't get, actually, when John Robbins got it. So other than that, but I think confidence of going into auditions knowing that I can do this. If you don't want me, that's fine. But I'm not going to go and go, please, please, and be so nervous. And I'm just going to go in fully prepared. I'm ready to show you what I can do. And if I'm not right, I'm not right.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot lately, and some really interesting stuff that I've been coming across is this idea of with or without you energy, which it very much seems like that was. It's like, I'm going to be really successful. I'm going to get this. I'm going to do other things with or without you. But if you want me for this part, that's really cool. Yeah. And I think it just changes the whole perception of how you then present yourself in an environment. Like if you walk into somewhere without you energy, you're like, I don't necessarily need you. Yeah. But this partnership could be really cool. Yeah. But if you're just going in going, oh, I really, really need this, I think they're like, there might be a barrier.
And that's a really good way of putting it. And I think it's a shame because, sometimes just being desperate for a job shouldn't be counted against you or your personality, because you're just desperate to do this one. It's like when you take your driving test, you desperately want to pass your driving test. Even when I went back to Les Mis, where I'm now playing Thénardier, I went into that audition process with a confidence of, it was a different thing of going back after 10 years and constantly feeling like the powers that be in musical theatre have so much power over you. I sort of went in there, and not with an arrogance, just with I do other things. And even though they were like, the final's next week. And I was like, well, what day? And they went, it's Thursday. I was like, I can't do Thursday. And I'm not encouraging people to do that, but it was a great confidence of going, I can't just do everything that because I've just spent 10 years making a career for myself where I've got a diary full of, might be a bit of telly, might be a radio, might be a podcast that can't just be moved immediately for this. Yeah. And again, that wasn't an arrogance thing. It's just, it was such a nice feeling of them, of having to go, no, well, I can come in this day. Which is amazing. Because you do feel, I think, when you start out that it's just like, oh, God, anything, please give me a job, give me a chance. Yeah. So it has been nice coming back to it with a more of a confidence of, I've done other things. I've gone away and I've done other things. I've not just gone away because I wasn't getting lead parts. I've gone away because I wanted to try something else. And I feel like actually people like Cameron McIntosh and James Powell and Lawrence Connor, I think all those people have really respected that I've done that. And every time I've seen them over those 10 years, Cameron's always been like, we're very proud of you. And, you know, and people are like, we're going to get you back. We're going to get you back one day. And it's been nice to feel like people are impressed by the fact that I've gone away. And even my other acting friends and stuff, that no one's ever sort of thought, oh, you gave up. It's just you decided you wanted to go and challenge yourself doing something else.
Yeah, diversifying.
Yeah, completely.
So that 10 years out of theatre.
Yeah.
Let's just dive into that.
Okay, yeah. Well, basically, so like, I did Les Mis and Avenue Q in South Pacific. And then I sort of just started putting these videos on YouTube. Just, I don't know, it was, I sort of had this thing of like, if I get 100 views, that's cool, you know, and if I get 500 views, that's cool, and just kept building it week by week. But then when this Downton one went a bit mad, it was like, oh, I need to, and then James Seabright, producer, said to me, you should do an Edinburgh show. And then that's when I wrote The Only Way is Downton with a wonderful director called Owen Lewis. And I'm really glad that I did it. I think some hindsight makes me think, oh, maybe I should have just stuck at the YouTube thing and just been, because I was doing that 11 years ago and just stuck doing that. And then maybe I'd be living in a £10 million house with like, you know, a slide instead of stairs. But I don't know. But I think getting out there, and I was so proud of that Downton show and get all the places I got to visit and stuff.
Had you written anything before?
Not really, only the sketches that I'd written. And I'd always had, you know, when I was at drama school, I used to get up and do impressions of the teachers. And I would get up and do, you know, and I would always do a narrative-led thing. So we had a singing teacher called Ross Campbell, and he, you know, he sort of sounded like this. And, you know, and he was always writing a book. I think he eventually released this book, but I was always had this, I wrote a sketch where it was like, Ross Campbell's releasing his book and he needs to get it published. So he needs to ask this teacher and this teacher. And then I would go, and so what did Michael Moore think? And go, okay, I think you should do this. So I would flip between the characters, or it would be the teachers were putting on the nativity play and this teacher said this and this teacher said that. And I think I should be the wise man. So it was always a narrative-led way of playing lots of impressions within one sketch, but I would always be every single character. And that was from when I was at drama school, my second year at drama school. And that was always the bit I enjoyed the most about the year, was getting up and doing that set of impressions. So that's kind of what I always had in the back of my mind of what I wanted to do with it. And when you're at uni, there's often chances to go and do the Chortle Student Comedian of the Year Award, which I didn't even know about. I didn't know where stand-up clubs were or anything like that. I just liked watching stand-up and I knew I did good impressions. What I mean is that, like, so then I'd written that stuff, and then when I was in Les Mis, I did the same thing, and it was Earl Carpenter was putting on a soiree, and it was like The Apprentice, but he was Alan Sugar, and it was like, I need you, you know, to put on this soiree, and I need you, and I need Carl Mullaney, and da-da-da, and I would play every character within that. And again, one of the most enjoyable times of that year I did Les Mis was that. So I then basically just put that into a Downton Abbey state. So it was just all the Downton characters, but they went on shows like The Great British Bake Off, and I think Mr. Bates had to play Andy Murray at tennis at Wimbledon. And then they went on X Factor and all sorts of things. So I took them out of the Downton world onto other popular TV shows. And I wrote an incredibly long, boring 2-hour script with some funny moments in it. I'd never written stuff before. And Owen Lewis, brilliant director, and a script editor called Jeremy Lim sat the three of us for about 4 weeks, beating it into shape.
And how was that?
It was amazing. It was amazing. At times it was tough because I was like, I know what my vision is and I know what I think is funny. And I was working with guys who were 10, 15 years older than me with lots of experience. And it was hard because I was like, I know what's funny. And they were like, well, I don't think that's funny. And I was like, well, I do. So there was a bit of that. And then times I had to really trust that they were brilliant and knew what they were doing. What's brilliant about Owen is he leaves no stone unturned. So like any moment that wasn't an 8, 9 or 10 out of 10 gag was not good enough. And I really valued that because I think it would have been quite easy. Oh, that'd be fine. instead of like, no, it needs to be really good because you're new and you're going out there. And, so I went to Edinburgh in a 49-seater venue, a porter cabin, shipping container. And yeah, it was the Pleasance This. I don't know if they've sort of got versions of them now up in Edinburgh. But like within the first 2 days, I started selling out every night. And then within like a week, the whole run had sold out. And the reviews, like, it's weird looking back at the reviews because like there was some that were amazing. Like the Telegraph gave me 4 stars and that was a huge thing. Like it's funny working with people in Les Mis, like the guys in Les Mis, they don't realize that 4 stars in comedy is amazing. Like you get 4 or 5 stars, that's all you're talking about. So to get the 4 stars in the Telegraph and the Independent at the time was amazing. But I look back at Chaltalk, I think gave me 2 stars. And I think and some of the other ones weren't great, but I'd already sold out and we were putting on extra shows. And so as a debut year, which I didn't even know about Edinburgh debuts, James Seabright said, you should write the show. I wrote the show. We went up there and it was all a big success. But, now once I'd hung out with comedians for 10 years, getting up to the first time you go to Edinburgh usually takes you 3 or 4 years. But I just didn't know any of this. I just was like, I'll go. I did 2 previews of that show and went and did a run. Like my latest show I did, Gritty Police Drama, which we might get to, like I did like 35 previews of that before I took it to Edinburgh. For 9 months around the country, just trying it out.
Oh, there's so many questions I want to ask.
Sorry.
I don't want to jump about.
No,
don't be sorry. No. Don't be sorry. I'm fascinated by the idea that you always knew you wanted to perform, that was what you were going to do.
Yeah.
Some people have said that, but had like a real drive and a real like, that is the goal I'm setting myself.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't quite sound like it was. It doesn't sound like it was drive. It sounds like it was just. It just was. Yeah,
it's weird. I'd always had this thing that I was like, I want to be in Les Mis and I want to be in Avenue Q. From seeing those 2 shows, I was like, look, I do voices and I'm funny, and I can sing Empty Chairs, Empty Tables. I'm like, I can do those 2 things. So when they happened in the first year and a half, that was when I suddenly went, oh, well, am I enjoying this? Because I had got to a point, yes, I was in the ensemble and I was first cover Marius. That's when we first met. Yeah. And I was in the ensemble of Avenue Q. When I got offered ensemble in Avenue Q, I'd actually turned it down. And John Robbins said to me, I've heard you turn it down. Why have you done that? And I was like, because I want to play the part. And I was like 21, maybe 22. And he was just like, you're an idiot. He was like, ring him back. So I rang him back and said, I want to do it. And I'm really glad I did, because Chris Thatcher, who I was understudying, is like my best mate now. So I'm glad that I did it. And I was, and learned a lot from being in the ensemble. But once I'd finished those 2 jobs, I was at a point of where I didn't know if musical theatre really was for me. I'd sort of got to a point where I was like, I don't know if the enjoyment is enough for me. And I felt I was at an age where I was like, well, I don't have the responsibilities. So if I don't earn for a bit, as long as I do a part-time job doing some teaching or something, I've got enough to pay the bills and pay my rent, then I can sort of do what I like. And it's hard to think back now because, that's 12 years ago. So it's a long time ago now. But I definitely had a confidence of like, I'm going to do something else and I'm going to do these videos on YouTube. And then opportunities came. And it's funny looking back at those opportunities because, I was getting meetings with BBC and Sky and all that stuff, and they were like, what are your ideas? And I was like, here are my ideas. They're all shite. But at the time, I was just like, oh, I can just do this. And I got offered and did my own TV show in 2015 called Luke Kempner's Impression of 2015. Listen, I'd love to get that opportunity again now with 10 years more experience. But at the time, I was like, yeah, I can do it. And so I just kept taking every opportunity and just going with confidence that I have the ability. And I don't think I didn't have the ability. I just didn't think I had the experience. Where I think now I've got experience of what I'm good at.
But you couldn't have had it at that point.
No.
It's like, there's nothing you could have done to change that. Where do you think that confidence came from? Was it confidence, or was it just, you described being quite naive about Edinburgh and just not knowing how things worked and therefore just going ahead and doing it?
I think self-doubt has come to me as the years have gone on. I think I've doubted myself more and more and more as the years go on, because it's easy when you've not had, even because, like I say, when I've had 9 months out of work, I started to think, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. And I think like when you've not, when my TV show, look, I had a TV show that was out, but it didn't get commissioned for a series. I wasn't suddenly in every single thing going. So like that was like, okay, maybe that wasn't good enough. So like as much as those, I've had to dig really to the depths sometimes to bring that confidence back out to write another show and write a new video. Like, I mean, we're jumping about, but during COVID, I was putting these videos out where I was, Boris Johnson doing my COVID, my speeches, and I was doing, comical turns on different, views of what he's actually been saying, and they started doing really well, thousands of views. But then my brain just went, what if the next one's not good enough? And then it was like, maybe I just won't do one, because if I don't do one, because all it takes is one person to go, that was shit. That wasn't funny. That was boring. And it doesn't matter if you've got thousands of people saying that was brilliant. That person said it was boring. And they go, oh yeah, no, I did think actually, oh no. And it stopped me a bit. And I think that has stopped me at times, when sometimes you need to just wade through that bullshit and keep that confidence. But it's hard. It is hard.
I think that's the trouble with it, gaining experience as well, isn't it? That you gain experience, both positive and negative. And I think it becomes very, very difficult, as you say, to try and manage the positive against the negative, or rather the negative against the positive as you get older.
Yeah.
But I think looking back at everything that you have achieved and everything that all the stuff that you've worked on, and you say you're starting to regain some of that confidence, or have regained that confidence. Yeah. Was there a turning point there?
I think my latest show, Gritty Police Drama, the one-man musical, which is 60 impressions, 60 minutes, one murder. And it's sort of based on things like Happy Valley and Line of Duty and Luther. Yeah. But within it, like the Downton show, it's all gritty police dramas. But within that, there's all sorts of other celebrities, footballers and Clarkson's Farm and all sorts of things, as well as singing. So there's rewritten versions of Wicked songs and Phantom of the Opera and etc. I think I knew that show was going to be good, and I think I'd taken away from doing all the stand-up, and I'd worried at times, maybe I've tried to become a stand-up too much. I was like, I've got to be a stand-up. I've got to show people that I can talk about myself and be serious. And I remember my mum saying, it was your show, my Downton show. It was great. It's very safe, very safe. And I was always like, how dare you say it safe? She still is annoyed I ever mentioned that. But I was like, I'll show you. And I wrote shows that sort of had pathos at the end. And even my last show, Macho Man, I wrote about my daughter's birth was really tricky, and how that made me more of a man and da-da-da. But I think I just got to the point at the end of that show, at the end of my Macho Man tour, I just went, what are you trying to do? Like, what do you actually enjoy doing? And that is being silly. And that's what I did at school, was I was silly, and I got told off for it at school, but then I make a living out of it now. So it's being silly, and is doing voices, and is not taking life too seriously, singing, doing it all, and running out of energy and being sweaty on stage, or trying to not run out of energy, and doing it all, throwing it all out there. And I think when I started writing that show in January 2023, I just knew it was going to be good. And I remember some people saying to me, you shouldn't do that. You should do a concert of songs. Because I'd had some songs in my previous tour show, which had gone very well in that show. And they were like, you should just do the songs, because you could do that anyway. You could do that in New York, you could do that in Vegas, but I was like, nah, like, I want to write this narrative-led gritty police drama. We all love gritty police dramas in this country. Let's take the piss out of it. And I want to play all these characters. And I could see it, and I knew it was going to be good. So I think just doing that, and I think that going so well, and having an Edinburgh like I'd had when I'd done my Downton show. And I hated having to say to my current director, Ben Clark, who I've been writing with for years, I hated always saying to him, when I did the Downton show, I did this. Because I constantly say that. And he was, he's so lovely. He was always, oh yeah, cool. But like, I don't need to say that, because I'm like, when I did gritty police drama, this is what worked, and I probably will do Edinburgh next year in 2025 and write a new show, but I know the format and I know what works with that. So it has given me a lot of confidence. But also, the thing is with it all is it's so easy to not start something. It's so easy to not write a funny video. You know, like I saw the Trump stuff last week, him being guilty on 34 charges. I'm like, oh, I could do something. I could have him in prison. I could do my first few days of prison. That would be a fun thing to write. And then I didn't do it. And I'm busy. I've got a 2-year-old daughter. But like, there is time in the day. She's in nursery today. I've had 3 hours this morning, but I thought it'd be better to like fold my t-shirts.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be better to play my cricket game on my thing. Like, there's time, you know, and I could have made time. And so I think having the confidence to just get on and start something is the thing that where the self-doubt you have to beat away and go, no, just get on and start it. Because often once you start it, you follow through with it.
This episode is sponsored by Vocality, a specially formulated blend of tea for professional voice users. Each ingredient has been carefully selected to help you soothe and take care of your voice. The tea is naturally caffeine-free, suitable for vegans, and does not contain any artificial flavours or colours. Vocality is the secret to vocal clarity in a cup.
Is there a distinction for you between work and play? Because it feels very much like the stuff that you're now doing and the stuff that you enjoy doing is very playful.
Yeah.
But like starting a video, creating, recording, is there a point where it's gone from, oh, this is really fun to do, to now, oh, this feels
Completely.
like work and I don't want to do it?
Completely. You know, you've hit on something there, because I think when I started on YouTube and all that, I found it all incredibly playful. It didn't feel like work at all. And I think the confidence was there as well, because I had a confidence I could do an impression of anybody. I thought everyone would love it. Whatever I did, I thought everyone would love it, which is mad, but I did. And then I think as soon as you think, oh, not everyone loves it, and actually some people think you're an idiot for doing it, and some people will watch it and comment and say, oh, I loved it all, but that bit was shit, and you'll go, and I think that's when it becomes work, because you're like, oh, I've got to do this thing because that's what's going to help me get more work, and that's what's going to keep me out there. That's what's going to keep me present. Especially when I didn't have Les Mis, you know, and then the trouble is now I'm in Les Mis, it's so easy to rest on your laurels, you know, because I'm in a show every night, but there's time during the show I can be writing stuff. There's time when I make sure I get to the theatre an hour before, you know, and I've had periods in this first 6 months where I've done some writing and I've been working on my show, but I could be doing that every day. You really could. You could be doing it 3 times a week, and you're still being so, you're being so proactive. And so that frustrates me at times that I've let that. I feel like I should be working a bit harder with that stuff, because Les Mis is essentially, it's hard work, but it's easy because it's a brilliant show. It's never going to close. I know it works. Thénardier is an incredible part. No one's ever going to come and say, I just didn't really, the material wasn't quite there. It's so relaxing. People like say, you're working so hard. I'm like, mate, this is easy. Going out to freaking, Hull to 20 people to see if they'll laugh at your thing that you've written. That's hard.
Yeah.
When you've driven there and you might make 15 quid from once you've bought food, driven there, like that's hard. Like being in Les Mis is a piece of piss. As great as it is, and I love it, but it's lazy of me to do Les Mis. It's harder work to go, no, I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to have that regular income. I'm just going to trailblaze and do my other thing. Like, yeah, that's the truth of it.
You said that after doing Avenue Q, you were thinking, I don't know if this is everything, but you've come back.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, I did South Pacific first as well, even before I left. And that was, my agent said to me, I've got an audition for South Pacific. And I was like, I don't want to do it. and he went, well, go to the audition, see how you feel. Went to the audition and I got it. And he rang me and he went, there is nothing like a dame. Nothing. And I was like, right. And he goes, oh, you don't seem happy. I was like, no, because I said I didn't really want to do it. But I did it again because, it's at that time it was probably like 750 quid a week or 800 quid a week. And you're like, amazing. But I've come back. Yes, I've come back to theatre because James Powell saw me on Richard Osman's House of Games. And I constantly, my sort of stand-up shtick, if you were, is showing off that I was in Les Mis. I mention it. I always say it's not something I particularly like to mention. Look down at my CV. So I would do a lot of that in my stand-up, and I would talk about it on telly shows quite a lot. And even when I did Cespat Lunch for 3.5 years, and it was every anecdote used to start with when I was in Les Mis, and that became my sort of catchphrase. But James Powell saw me on that show, and then spoke to Joe Parsons, who's the resident, and said, "Oh, would Luke want to do Thénardier for 6 months?" So then they called up my agent, and said, "Look, would you like to come in to be seen for Thénardier?" And I'd said to Joe on a stag do for another friend of ours, Johnny Fines, "Oh, can I come play Thénardier?" when I was hammered. And he goes, "Oh, would you want to?" I was like, "Yeah." And just sort of said it. And I'd always said it to my wife as I was like, "Oh, one day I'll go back and play Thénardier, one day." But never quite believing that was going to happen, and never quite, actually going in and having to audition for it is slightly different when that's a challenge than just saying you're going to do something. So then when I was up for it and I went in for it, I got very excited as soon as because I just thought I'm too young. I just thought they're not going to see me for it because I'm too young for it. I just thought it was a part that, I grew up watching Alan Armstrong doing it. I was like, you got to be in your 40s at least. So anyway, then when I went up for it and I loved it. And I loved working. James Powell, I knew he was like, "You're not quite there yet, but I can get you there." And we did 2 sessions, and then a session in front of everyone, in front of all these people like Cameron Lawrence, Stephen Brooker, people I'd not seen properly since I'd done certainly Avenue Q, certainly Les Mis before that. So it'd been sort of, 13, 14 years since we all looked a little bit older than we were before, but it was just all these old faces that I was friends with, really. Yeah. So it didn't feel panicky. And I just went in there and there was 3 of us left up for it at the final. And I just really enjoyed it. I was like, I'm on the Sondheim Theatre stage. And I'd never done a West End show at that point because I'd always done Les Mis on tour. Yes, it was at the Barbican, but and I'd done Avenue Q on tour, and then I did South Pacific Barbican, but also on tour. I'd never done a West End run. It was always been a bucket list to play a lead in a West End show. And then at Thénardier, just a show I know inside out, and a part I knew well, but I'd then researched the hell out of it for when I was auditioning. And so I was just buzzing. I just was loving it and getting to be on stage and do it once or twice. And Claire Machin, who's my Madame Thénardier, and she was currently Madame Thénardier already, she then comes out and we got to do the bargain together, and she was so lovely, and that was a lot of fun as well. And Cameron they were very giving in the audition because these are people that have seen this part played how many times, how many even individually, but as well as seeing the show thousands and thousands of times. So to get they laughed so much at every little thing that I tried, which I know was forced, but it really helped. Even just slight it's just slight views on certain bits in Master of the House, and just going filling up the sausages with this and that, and just certainly little pauses I tried to build within the music, comic pauses and faces and all sorts of things. They really laughed along with that, which gave me great confidence during it. And the bargain was lots of fun, trying to find a different way of, there's the whole, "My darling Colette, Cosette, Cosette," and I leave a long gap. I sort of do, "Darling Colette," she goes, "Cosette," and I just leave it as long as I know I can leave it. Colette, Cosette, and I them being happy with that. Just all of it gave me great confidence, but I just thought I'm too young. So then I did it. I was really happy with how it had gone, and I didn't hear for a week or so. And I was trying to get everything out of Joe, because Joe Parsons is a good mate of mine, but he just went, "Oh, look," and he goes, "No, they loved you, but I don't know anything yet." And he did, but he was like, "I don't know anything yet." But I was like, "They love you, but come back in 5 years," or something like that. Yeah. But then, and then to get it was just one of the greatest moments of my life. Oh my God. And also from all these 10 years of just getting out there and going, "Do you like my material?" It felt quite relaxing. And I know I was sort of touching this. I was like, I'm going to go into a show for, at that point, 6 months. I'm now staying until July 25. But it's just knowing I've got work and a show that works. The tickets are always sold. Yeah. I just don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Yeah. It's quite relaxing. And I love the part. I love working with Claire Machin. I really enjoy it. I've been doing it 9 months and I still really enjoy it. So yeah, it's wonderful.
just as you're describing it and seeing the brightness and the energy and the passion for it is so incredible.
Yeah.
And I think it feels very you, and it's nice that you get ownership to play with it. And it's not so scripted, that you do get those moments to bring yourself to it, I think is really nice.
Well, it's been nice in rehearsals with that. And Claire's what Claire's great at, and we both love old school comedies,
Yeah.
you know, Fawlty Towers and Blackadder and Python and Keeping Up Appearances. Like, we chat about old comedies all the time. She's a big, comedy nut like I am. So we're always keen to find new comic pauses and anything you can get out of it, because it is heavily scripted, and it's a show that works. Like, and also, you know, what I love is that Cameron really likes to show the darkness of Thénardier, because in the book he's not a comic character. Yeah, he's a bit of a showman in the pub, but essentially he's the villain of the piece. So it's like, you don't want to just play it like Christopher Biggins, as wonderful as you would be, Biggins, but you want to do it. You want to show that grit and like his slit your throat at any moment, but there's loads of comic moments to be had in it. And I feel like I'm still every day striving to squeeze the most juice out of all of those moments. Even I always forget the words. I do the show every night. Anytime I try and quote some of the words, I forget it. But in the absence of a victim, dear Inspector, may I go? Yeah. Like in that moment, and it's like, and remember when you nicked him, it was me that told you so. And I've tried different ways of doing so like that, or so, and trying to find. But I've sort of landed on this. Me that told you, and I punch of air. Me that told you so, and then as soon as he turns, I try and make my voice as quiet as possible. And so I do so, and then I gently walk back and just keep that woo. And if I can add a little break in there, which usually makes the guards behind me laugh, try and go ooh, and just gently pull the thing. And just at the moment you pull up the baton that's behind you, so your back being arrested, and just ooh. And finish like that, you know you can get a big laugh from the audience, and it's a joy when you nail it.
Oh, I got to come and see that.
He's very good at it.
Do you know what? I was just thinking, I would love to see you as a Beetlejuice. I think just in the way that you've kind of described that and the characterizations, I think that would be a really cool character.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Tell me about your voice.
Yes.
You play with your voice so much, and you're describing now playing a very particular character.
Yeah.
Tell us about throwing your voice around and how you know it's your version.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I've worked with people before who were very talented at impressions, and we've struggled for a little while to find their authentic voice in the middle of it, because it's so easy to fall into other sounds.
Yeah.
Have you
finding my voice was from doing stand-up, because that is the only way that you can do it. And also, when you're an actor and you've been to drama school, you think you can be a stand-up because you think you can write a piece of material and perform it on stage. And yes, essentially that's what you're doing. But to actually find what makes you funny on stage, you need to do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigs. And that's what I did. You know, I was doing gigs to one person, sometimes just the other comedians that were on the bill. And it's hard to explain, but that is the only way you can find what makes you funny. And like now, I know what makes me funny, and it's a faux, arrogant sort of guy on stage doing all that when I was in Les Mis, kind of stuff. And then that has helped me when presenting, is that I can present as myself and be very natural. And I'm not trying, that is genuinely how I am. So I think that's how I've found my own voice with stuff. I mean, as far as singing as myself, I don't ever do that. So I can understand that might be quite difficult because actually that's not strictly true. Maybe I have a bit. Yeah, actually I did in my last tour. I sang as myself. I don't know. I suppose when I'm singing, I'm always singing comedy, so it's always gunning for the laugh more than here's some emotion as myself, which I think I could imagine being quite hard. But yeah, I just think from doing the stand-up helps you find your voice. And as far as like character stuff, because I do think you find your own version of an impression So it's very easy to copy someone else's impression when there's brilliant impressionists out there. But to find your own version, again, is finding what you find funny in it. And you're sort of creating a new stand-up each time. So even when you get someone like Louis Theroux, for example, I'd heard Alistair McGowan's Louis Theroux and I'd worked with Alistair McGowan, but I feel like my Louis is slightly different to his in that, you know, and I can sort of, I kind of know where he's placed, and I can, you know, that's me sort of, that's once there, I'm in the moment, that's his voice. But what I kind of do is that kind of thinking of the question, is that okay? Sort of asking, it's that sort of, that breathy kind of question. Does that feel sort of real? That feels like that sort of feels like it's him. And that's the bit that I found, is that kind of, is that weird to sort of look at that moment? And so I think it's once you've found your take on it, is then you can do it. Then I can freestyle. I could sit here for an hour of you interviewing me as Louis Theroux, because I found my version of him, sort of thing.
But that strikes me as being true of any interpretation of any character. You
exactly,
can take that
yeah.
with Thénardier, we can have it with Jean Valjean. That's how, I mean, you've just encapsulated how I work with people in terms of trying to help them find their performance of a role that has been performed by dozens and dozens and dozens of people before.
I think
it's wonderful.
What's really cool about what you're doing, though, is you're sort of doing that on another layer below. There's another layer to that.
Somewhere.
And that you're finding yourself, which is what we would do when we're working with singers, but then you're also finding the impression layered again with yourself. So that, do you see what I mean?
Yeah, it's what will feel authentic.
And it's what you
about
find
that character.
You know, I think sometimes I was always like, you've got to do stand-up, because if you do stand-up, I can be me and say what I feel about things, whatever it may be. But what I love with impressions, which it was Tom Reed Wilson who said this to me. I don't know if you know Tom Reed Wilson, lovely boy, brilliant presenter. He said to me, he's like, but your opinion, darling, comes through in your impression. It's your opinion in your joke that you're writing, darling. And it is that, because it's like, you know, if I'm writing Andy Murray, and, you know, it's fine, I can do the impression, I know where it's placed. But then when I write on top of it, I don't just write these thick. I write that because we know his mum and we know he's got a brother, I write that he's still a teenage boy and he has to ask his mum if he can play Mario Kart with Jamie, and it always lets me win. Like, my opinion is like, he's, however successful he is, he's still, we know him as this little boy of his mum that cheers him on from the side, and that's my take on it.
Yeah.
So it is your opinion, it is your voice coming through.
Oh my gosh, because obviously there's the performance component, which is incredibly impressive, but I'm just nerding out about the voice, like the production of the sound.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
I mean, it's so incredible, isn't it? Yeah. Just to be able to manipulate those placements and to really change your anatomy. I think, in a way, I guess you're doing beyond what typically I say would be expected of, you know, we work with singers, so let's say singers, in that they can find that one voice, but you're finding 50 voices and manipulating your voice. So do you have is there like a formula? Is there like a way that you go about manipulating your voice to find that character?
There's certainly, I do a lot, you know, I will listen a lot and try and hear where I can place it. So even for someone like Piers Morgan, you know, I could hear he's sort of a little bit of a lisp. I could hear that sort of lisp in there. And he's quite he's lispy when he's under pressure, actually. So if you see him on Question Time, he's a lot more lispy. But then when I find that he was interviewing people, I found that, you know, he's placing it further at the back, and he's always going to that same place, you know, and he's pushing his pencil forward, his pen, and he's asking you a question, you know, do you believe that? And then that's when I could start, and then you had the lisp for that, and you know, as soon as I could hear that, it's like, well, answer the question. You're not answering the question, are you? And I don't know, I sort of, you pick all those different components, you start there, and you hear that it's further back. Like someone like Harry Kane, the England captain, again, he's sort of there, you know, that's his sort of, but, you know, it's even further at the back, and then you start losing a little bit of the speech of it, and it's like, obviously you got to write on top of that. You know, it's close to being offensive, but, you know, he does, that is the way that he talks. And then you start adding what he's saying, and you go, yeah, no, at the end of the day, you always answer the question with, yeah, no. So like, and you build all that stuff in there. And then, again, it's, I suppose you're finding the placement, and then I correct it all the time by listening and go, no, it's there. I found that's where it is. And I've done it so many times in a conversation or on stage that I know how to talk like that. But then, even for someone like Michael McIntyre, for example, he's got that kind of gruff that where you place it, and you're adding that little bit of that sound in there. And I know when we've worked together, we've always talked about how that doesn't hurt. Because I don't know why that doesn't hurt, because it doesn't. I could talk, it's like Trekkie Monster, I know where it's placed, it doesn't hurt. Because I've placed it somewhere where it doesn't hurt. I think that's always my measure of it, is like, as long as it doesn't hurt, then I'm not doing anything wrong. But you guys correct me on that.
When I'm tremendously
listening
impressive.
to singers, this isn't special to me, this is, humans do this. Your larynx is responding.
Right.
Yes.
And I know that, because I work in the field I do, mine has become very attuned to that. And sometimes I'm actually diagnosing what's going on in somebody's voice by what I'm feeling in my own.
Okay.
Do you think that that's part of how you respond to voices?
I definitely, when I'm with people, if I can hear, and I'm one of those awful people that if someone's got an accent, I will start talking to them in their accent. But I'm always, because I'm just interested in where the sounds are placed. And so, like, Will Callan, who plays Marius at work, he's got this Scouse voice, and he's like, no, that doesn't sound anything like me, but like everyone thinks it does. But and I think it's, come into my dressing room and go, hey man, how's it going? And I find it very interesting where people's voices just sat.
Yeah.
And I do enjoy playing with those sounds. So I think, and then that's where, and going back to your question of like, does it become a work thing? When I started doing impression of teachers, or Earl Carpenter, I didn't listen to recordings of Earl. I just spoke to him. I knew how he sounded. Where now I do have to go and watch stuff and listen to it more than I used to, because I think I'm overthinking it.
I was going to say, is that because you expect so much more of yourself?
Yeah. So I'm like, I've got to listen to hours so I can get it perfect, sort of thing.
The voice component to me is so impressive.
But sometimes you have to alter it. So things like Jim Carter in Downton, he's Mr. Carson. Now his voice, he is a big man, and it is a lot lower than where mine sat. So I had to find ways of getting Daisy, of getting down there. Yes, Mrs. Patmore, and just find a sort of almost position with my mouth so I could sound like Mr. Carson. Where, like, essentially my voice I feel like it doesn't sit that low, like I'm a sort of high-ish baritone. So I have had to find ways of getting down to lower voices. And sometimes, like, I was working on an Audible piece recently, but, working with this guy, like, clearly smokes all the time. Like, you can see it in his teeth. This guy smokes a lot, right? But his voice is the most stunning voice you've ever heard, and it's so low and got so much. And he's worked, he's done voiceovers for 30 years, and he just sounds incredible. And sometimes I'm like, shall I just smoke for a bit? I can just smoke for a bit, and I could sound like that, because I can't do that. Just that beautiful, rich, whiskey, smoky voice. I'd love to be able to replicate that. But
it's called vocal damage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just want to damage it for a bit.
Temporarily.
Yeah.
But then surely you can think, I have those things to look forward to. Not in terms of vocal damage, obviously, but as the voice develops and matures, there's more things.
Definitely. Yeah.
Which means you're never going to be bored. You're never going to run out of material.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So do you think you will continue to do both?
Well, listen, they've been really good at Cameron Mackintosh Limited for allowing me to do my other work. I think they know that that's incredibly important to me. And I'm really proud of that, because, I took a bit of a leap of faith coming away from theatre. I could have just been like, stay in theatre, work my way up, lead roles, that's the journey. I left drama school, that's what I should do, and what an impressive journey that would have been. But I took a leap of faith to go, no, I'm going to go and do something else. And I think I was worried coming back to theatre, it would feel like I'm just shutting the door on something I've spent 10 years working on. So definitely do both. But now I'm back in theatre. There's lots of roles I'd like to do. Things like The King in Hamilton, or Mr. Wormwood, or Mrs. Doubtfire, or like I look at all these start to see these things, and I'm like, oh, that would be great. So my mum would love to see me play Javert, but I've told her that's not going to happen. But I just, so it's difficult because I want to do everything. And also be a dad at home, and a husband. So like I've kind of got, you've got to find enough time. So I'm going to try and do both is the answer. I might do Edinburgh next year. I want to do my gritty police drama show in a bigger theatre. That would be, like ideally if I had a week left of a career, like what would I like to do? I'd love to do that in like a 1,000-seater. Be amazing. But yeah, both.
There's a very clear link there. I mean, I know you spoke about having done TV and things, but you clearly really thrive on the live environment.
Yeah. I love live because I think like there's something, with AI and with the way telly has changed, even since I got into television. I was first on TV in a show called Murder and Successful, which has just come onto Netflix. Not that I need to plug it for any reason, but it is a brilliant show. It won a BAFTA, so you should watch it. But since I did that show in 2014, even since then, telly has changed so much. Of how much is on streaming, how much people watch, what are people watching. Like I worked on Channel 4 for 3 years, the viewing figures for Channel 4, the way that has changed, it is really complex and a difficult world. But one thing that will never go and will never be able to be replaced by AI or anything like that is live theatre and live comedy and being in a live experience. And I love that even since I went away from theatre for 10 years, maybe what's changed is people get their cameras out a lot more at the end. Which has surprised me. I didn't realise that is a thing that happens now. Everyone's got a camera out filming the bows, but it's still essentially the same. And I love that something exists for that one moment, and we all experience that. Even this will get edited, but we've experienced this thing live, and I do thrive on that because having done a lot of live telly as well, is that you don't make mistakes when it's live. And if you do make mistakes, you get yourself out of it because you've got to. And I like being on stage when stuff goes wrong. It's different in Les Mis because you haven't got as much freedom. But with stand-up, when stuff goes wrong, or like, I love that. If someone laughs too loud, we've all known that person's laughed too loud. We can't just not reference it. If that person's called me a wanker, like we can't ignore that person has gone, you're a wanker. We've got to deal with that. And I love that. People are like, would you get scared about being heckled? I'm like, no, it's great. I don't want people to do it, but if I can stay in control of it, and also like I've got more experience than the person that's called me a wanker, so I can deal with you. And if you get to a point where I can't deal with you, then there's a security man that will come and chuck you out. So like, it's fine. But yeah, so like the live experience is I just think that's something that they won't be able to recreate. So yeah, definitely thrive on that. And theatre. Like my heart has always been in theatre. Even I love doing comedy and I love being able to do both, but musical theatre and theatre in general, that's what I love. Working with great people.
A collaborative part to it as well.
Big difference from like leaving stage when you've done a one-man show again and you're in Newbury, then coming off and as soon as the curtain comes down, me and Claire give a massive hug, great job, see you tomorrow, and that's lovely.
Yeah.
Instead of coming off and going, text Lana how that went, and then get in the car, stick on Hamilton.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day because I went to see Billy Crudup.
Oh, right, yeah.
Do his one-man
show. Yeah.
And he was spectacular.
Yeah.
He was absolutely spectacular. Yeah. And at the end, he took one bow and he walked off.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's that like, walking backstage and there's nobody... Maybe there is somebody there to high five or whatever, but you just go back to your dressing room and you get changed and you go. Like...
That's the thing is like, it's expensive to have a support act. You got to pay them as well.
Yeah.
You got to get them a hotel room.
Yeah.
So like, it's a lot cheaper to go without a support act, but that means it's quite lonely. Yeah. Although saying that, when I was at Soho Theatre recently, I came off stage and they had a show on after mine, which I didn't realise. So I'd like finished my first night and it like gone really well, and I came off and there's like Wilf from the Traitors and then like two other people and Stephen Bailey, a comedian. I was like, oh, hi guys. It's like sat in your dressing room. But usually, you're just coming off to nobody. And it is odd. How
do you handle it?
I suppose you just have to live off the moment when you're out there and it's going well and people laughing. And, you know, Robin Williams described it as you kill or you die. You know, that's why the term is you kill or you die. Because when you kill, oh my God, it's unbelievable. But when you die, it is horrendous. And also, like, it's really funny that people go, oh, like, have you ever seen a comedian die? I'm like, mate, there's no comedian that doesn't still die on stage. Like, Michael McIntyre, when he's trying his new stuff, there'll be moments where he doesn't get laughs and he has to go, oh, that doesn't work. I'm a huge fan of Frankie Boyle and Kevin Bridges. I've seen them do tryouts where the stuff doesn't work, but they're so experienced, they know, and it's fine. And their audience knows why they're there. So their audience is like, oh, this person's shit, because they know they're good.
Yeah.
But when you die on stage, it's so easy to come back after a good gig. But when you coming back after a gig where you've died, that's the tough bit. But that's what makes you a comedian is coming back. And that's why I say it's so relaxing about Les Mis, because I haven't got to worry.
Yeah.
I know it works.
Yeah.
They stand on their feet every night. Sorry to keep referencing how relaxing it is, but it is. It's quite chill.
I was going to ask you about that as well, because you mentioned you thought you were being quite lazy doing that, and yeah. I know you said in some of your feedback notes for us that you worry that you're always chasing something, always looking for something.
Yeah.
Is that a hard thing to balance now? The fact that the comedy is presumably mentally all-consuming, but this is manageable. This is
It's hard because I know I could be doing more, and I get very guilty. I don't like if I'm sitting there and you look at your phone and you go, I've spent 4 hours today on social media. You look and see how much you've been on social media. Like what? Just scrolling Instagram, and looking at Twitter, and saying, it's like, come on, man, like you're better than that, and that frustrates me. And then when I hear people in the cast, with respect, sort of go, it's been a busy day, and I'm like, they've like might have gone to the gym and then come to work, and I'm like, I've had a 2-year-old since 6:30. I've done this, I've written this, I've thought about this, I've stressed out that I've been on social media too much. Like all these, like you have more hours in the day to do stuff, and I think and what I hate is like, I don't want to finish my Les Mis contract and go, right, now what? It needs to be finishing with something ready to go.
Has that been the case all the way through? Or are you putting that pressure on because it looks on paper like that would be possible? I
put the pressure on myself because I think, you can blame yourself if you're not doing enough. It's so easy for people to go, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And they're like, I'm waiting for my agent to call me with an audition. And it's like, if I was chatting to drama school students, and I'm sure they're better at it now than when I left, is that if you just think, what you do is you finish drama school and then you wait for you get an agent if you're lucky, and then you wait for your agent to call, and your agent calls you and say, got an audition, then you go to the audition and then you hopefully get it, and then you do the job, and then when that job's coming to an end, you start the process again. Like, and I'm sure that is, and I know that is the case for a lot of people. I can't work like that, and I don't think I can't have that control in other people's hands. You've got to be able to do something, even if it's that's going to more dance classes, going to acting classes, going to singing lessons. Like even if it's just that, like once a week, twice a week, like that's doing something more than just waiting. My thing, I was like, well, I'm just going to create my own thing, because then I can go out and gig and earn at least 200 quid a night with my own thing that I've done. And it's taken a few years to get to the point where you can earn money 4 or 5 nights a week doing it, but I felt like, well, that's in my control. And I wanted to wrestle back some of that control to make it my own thing, which it's not easy, and it's not always available. You can't just go, I'll write my own TV show and it'll happen. Like, it's really hard. But I'd far rather put the pressure on myself to have some of the control. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. I
completely
get it. I totally get it.
Sense. And it's just wonderful, actually, that you are able to channel that need for control into another creative outlet. Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of people feel the need and don't necessarily feel that they have another outlet to put it into.
Yeah. And I'm sure you don't always do have another outlet. But like I said, even if your vision is, and your goal is to be leads in musical theatre, there are more things you can be doing. Like, we met to go over the King stuff in Hamilton, because I'd love to play that part. I should be practicing that song every day. So I know it inside out. So when the audition comes along, if it comes along, if Joel leaves, then I can be ready. I'm not going, right, okay, I've got to learn it. I know the bits you have to do. You have to do the 3 songs. So like I should be doing that every day, and I'm not. But I should be doing it every day.
Well, you're going to be now.
I'm going to be
now. I'm going to be texting you and saying,
exactly.
Get on with it.
Because then when it comes around, you're ready.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can't sit there and go, well, I had to wait for my agent to call me. No, I was ready. So then when my agent called me, it wasn't like, fuck. It was like, oh no, here we go.
Yeah.
And if they don't give it to me because I'm not good enough, whatever, fine. But I've done everything in my control to make it possible. It pisses me off when people say, oh, I went to audition, I forgot the words. I'm like, how? How did you forget the words? Oh, no, you weren't prepared enough.
Oh, harsh.
It's harsh.
Harsh. There's some.
I get it though. Like,
there's some anxiety issues and management.
Of course.
Yeah.
I know that. And it's so easy. It's so easy to say that and just go as if I've never forgotten the words in an audition. But I think my point is that there are so many things in your control that you can blame on. I haven't got enough time. I've only got a week till the audition. Like, you've got so much time to learn that material and get in there and show yourself in the best way you can. And if you don't get it, fine. But you did everything you could.
That's it, isn't it? I think you can improve your chances of success massively.
Yeah, completely.
Like, you can still do all of that stuff and go in and forget things. Totally fine.
Yeah.
But you could also not do all of that stuff and go in a lesser position. So I totally get it. I mean, this is me to a T. Like, I mean, over prepared for everything.
Yeah.
But I think it is so valuable to be able to understand. You're right. These are things that are in our control. These are things that we can be doing. That's so empowering as well.
If you are that much more aware of the things over which you do have control, does that help you let go of the things over which you do not have control?
It helps you enjoy it more.
Yeah.
You know, like I went in for a part recently, which I ended up not doing because I was staying on in Les Mis, and I enjoyed the audition process. And I know that I didn't used to when I left drama school. I was so nervous, so desperate, and da-da. But like, if you've worked so hard on it all, you have to just try and find a way of you. It's like an athlete that's going for the Olympics, and you're finally there in the crowd, and you're about to do the long jump. And you can rehearse walking in and ready for the jump. You can rehearse the jump. You can rehearse the bit before the jump. You can rehearse the day. You can rehearse all that stuff. So then, like, you know, I was getting a bit nervous when I started as Thénardier. I wasn't nervous once I was on stage, but I was only nervous the bit before Master of the House. So I started just going down to the place where I stand in the Sondheim Theatre outside the toilets and just doing that bit when I didn't have to go on stage, just rehearsing that bit.
That's completely brilliant. Please say that again.
Please
say that again, because people need to hear that.
But that's what you can, because that's the bit you never rehearse.
Yeah.
And I learned this from interviewing some athletes on 5 Live, is like though you can control rehearsing those bits. The bit where you're going to be nervous is because you've never rehearsed that.
Yes.
You just rehearse the song.
Yes.
Where you can rehearse that bit before you go in, what you're going to say to them. They're going to go, how's things? You know, you're going to have to get there and say, what room am I auditioning in? Yeah. It's up there. Have you got your water? Do you know where you're going to put your bit of paper down? Are you going to have a bit of paper? Are you going all these things you can prepare. You are still going to get nervous. I get nervous. 100% get nervous and anxious and all the rest of those things. But I just feel like if you've run through that process, you have more chance of being prepared for it.
Yeah.
Genius. I love it.
Scar said be prepared, didn't he? And
we
must listen to Scar.
Okay, I got one last thing that I'm interested to know, and you've partly touched on this in what you were just saying. Oren was pointing out earlier this difference between play and work. How are you maintaining, now that you have a house and you have a child and you have a career that you want to maintain?
Yeah.
How are you preserving your sense of play in all of this?
Well, I'm thinking recently that I need to set aside more time. So if I need to get a couple of extra hours of childcare, which is that would be 15 quid an hour. So I need to pay that. So I've got more time to, like I talked about writing that Trump video. Now I'm going to write that today. I'm going to film it tomorrow because I know I've got the time tomorrow because childcare is booked. But I think doing that a bit more and being a bit stricter and not just going, oh, well, I can save myself a little bit of money and do the childcare myself, and go, no, because having that time set aside to do my comedy enriches me and makes me a lot happier if I'm putting that stuff out there and putting the work into that. And that is playful. So doing that, and I think just making sure that Sundays, look, I took some work in, would have been January on Sundays. So I did 7 weeks, every Sunday night was working as well as doing the show. And it put a strain on my marriage and a strain on me because I was out in London every single night. But I was like, I've got to work. I've been offered the work. I've got to do the work. And actually, listen, if it's thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, you've got to take it. But if it's not, and you can afford not to do it, it was the first time in my life I just thought, nah, it is more important to have been at home cooking a roast dinner. And, even though I didn't leave the house until 5 o'clock, so I was there for most of the day, but
it's coming.
having that evening, it's coming, you can't relax. And Alana knew it was coming as well. And being able to be like, no, tonight we're husband and wife. And even if it's just watching something whilst looking at our phones, you're still together. And I think I've put a lot of value on that. Whilst doing a show 6 times a week, you've got to make sure that Sunday is sacred and you're enjoying your family time.
Brilliant. I feel like you've answered so many of my life's problems.
Oh.
I doubt that.
We are called the 5 Minute Call.
Okay.
What do you do at the 5 Minute Call?
Well, in Les Mis, I have to immediately go down and put my convict outfit on, which is down in the quick change at your 5 minute call. So your 5 minute call, you go and do that. And then I go straight into D1, which is the older gentleman dressing room, and see my mates in there. Because I go and chat to Adam Pearce and Michael Baxter and Matt Dempsey. And I have a little chat with them for a couple of minutes. Then we get beginners and we go straight up to stage and do the show. So like, I think if I didn't have to, my 10-minute call, because that's more me time, is probably just checking that my daughter's gone to sleep on the monitor, chat to them for a little bit, and then just like, if I'm thinking 5 minute call before Thénardier, I do look in the mirror and I look at the blue jacket and I just think, this is fucking cool. So like, if it's my 5 minute call before I play Thénardier, it's just going, man, I get to do what Alan Armstrong did. And and that video I used to watch constantly, like, I'm doing that tonight. And I'm in that blue jacket. Like, so that is still gives me excitement.
I love it. We have one final question for you. And I don't know what it is.
Oh,
so we ask every guest
write
every previous guest to write a question for the next guest, and it goes completely unseen until we read it. When was the last time you felt proud of yourself, and why?
The gritty police drama, the one-man musical at the Soho Theatre. Like, I wanted to play the Soho Theatre since I started comedy, because it's just like the holy grail of comedy in London. Other than like, the Palladium, but hey, I'm not playing the Palladium just yet, but selling out the Soho Theatre, doing my one-man show, it being a standing ovation, I just thought, you set out to do this. People told you, maybe don't go to Edinburgh this year. What does it actually do for you? People said to you, do a show that was just comedy songs. And I was like, listen, a lot of people did believe in the idea, but there was a few doubters, and I just always stayed true to that. And I'm so proud that it's such a great show, and like, people really enjoy it, and I enjoy performing it, and it went how I wanted it to. And that was a month ago, and I was dead proud of it.
Well, now I'm sorry, there's only 4 of us in the room to give you a round of applause.
That's all right. That's okay. Thank you.
Luke, thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope I didn't waffle too much.
Wonderful hearing your story, and thank you for sharing your time.
Thank you so much.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the 5 Minute Call. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and ring the bell for notifications. Your support really helps us bring you more amazing stories.
If you are or have been affected by any of the topics discussed in today's episode, please see the show notes below for some helpful resources.